Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run for the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we are slowly seeing the end to this quite significant cold spell that has given some very wintry conditions throughout the first third of January. It is going to slowly ease, especially further south and eastwards. It could hang on a little bit into early next week. I'm not expecting any more significant snow, but definitely cold overnight temperatures, especially through Monday, Tuesday, potentially still a frost developing in places. Now next week, as I said, we are going to see the end of this cold spell widely, but it's not going to turn, very mild. It is turning milder, but it's only really going back towards average or maybe slightly above average. As I said, still could see an inversion taking place. Overnight frosts are still a risk, especially further southwards. As we head into the longer ranges, we'll see from the latest GFS, GEM, ECM, WF and the ensembles, the high pressure dominance next week might only last sort of 4 or 5 days, perhaps only the working week next week, as we are starting to see some hints of a big pattern change towards the middle to second half of the month. At the moment, it's not really nailed on exactly what it will be, but it definitely looks like there's going to be a lot more mobility within the North Atlantic. So it does mean that we are unlikely to see a stationary pattern developing. Now, it does mean that it's unlikely to stay very mild for long periods of time, but it will also mean it's unlikely to stay very cold for long periods of time. We could be in a situation where we see lots of milder, wetter conditions crossed by with some very cold conditions, maybe even some snow, but not really lasting more than a couple of days. We are seeing some conflicting views from the models this evening, but all of them are roughly showing a very changeable and very mobile pattern in the North Atlantic, potentially even very stormy. That's something the ECMWF is looking at particularly. So we'll check that out in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, do like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we do have a bit of surprise snow around at the moment. We did expect to see a few flurries across northern and northwestern England, but we did expect the majority of this snow to sort of fleet away, really, not really amount to much as it came inland. As we'll see from the UKV in a minute, it really doesn't show much. It shows a few flurries, but it is sustaining itself at the moment. Not expecting it to make much of its way further eastwards and southwards, but given how cold the temperatures were last night, given how cold the surface temperatures are, the 2 meter temperatures are, all of this would be accumulating. So it does mean that even an hour or two of moderate snow could cause issues in these areas. And again, most of these areas still have a bit of lying snow, especially further inland. So this is one to watch through this evening. If we do have a look at the future radar, this radar does expect it to move inland before really petering away later this evening, really coming to nothing as it hits the Peak District there, Pennines, clearing the Lake District. Not expecting much as this does clear through, but it has produced some heavy snow through this evening, through this afternoon into the evening. So yeah, we'll see what amounts to this. But yeah, nowhere near, none of the models really had it predicted this intense at all. Now elsewhere, avoid the snow, the big thing has been the temperatures the last day or two. It's been exceptionally cold last night. That's Friday night. We'll have a look at those overnight temperatures in a minute. We didn't quite hit the minus 20 degrees that I thought we would hit, but we got down to minus 18. I think it was rounded minus 19 up near in Scotland at Altnahara. So yeah, got to pretty much as we expected, exceptionally cold. Of course, didn't see minus 20 everywhere or minus 15 everywhere, but a lot of places got minus 5 to minus 10, which is very, very cold. And to be honest, where I am, it's one of the harshest frosts I've ever seen. Again, maybe that's a bit of recency bias there, but definitely for the past few years, the harshest frost I've seen. As it looked like we had like an inch of snow, but it was all frost, no snow. There's a bit of lying snow from some of those wintry showers, bits of bobs of snow we saw from that channel low on Wednesday, but again, not amounting to much. Majority out there was frost, and the daytime temperature today did get above freezing, but given how cold the ground temperatures were, anywhere that stayed in the shade all day or saw very little sunshine stayed completely frozen solid. So there's proper winter temperatures out there. And I know I'm probably in one of the mildest spots with seeing a lot of sunshine today. Some places have got the cloud further northwards and freezing fog across parts of the West Midlands, parts of southern England and eastern England. So I was lucky being in a patch of sunshine. Some of these other areas would have seen very little thaw at all. We can see the temperatures at 4:30 in the afternoon, widely down towards freezing already. You can see where we've got a bit of winteriness and cloud further north. It's very cold widely. And then we can see the patches of freezing fog here across parts of the West Midlands into central southern England. Very close by, temperatures are a couple of degrees above freezing, and it's all because of that freezing fog keeping those temperatures so low, and across eastern England as well. So it is quite a marked difference there. Where we see those very cold temperatures. Now, the milder air isn't too far away. It's actually across parts of Western Wales, southwest England, and across the Republic of Ireland here. Temperatures into the double digits for some, right perhaps across the far west coast. It's, at the moment, the weather front, which is given that bit of precipitation and snow across northern areas, is sat pretty much out in the Irish Sea and is slowly making inroads and will continue to make inroads over the coming hours. We're expecting it to be another very cold night tonight, but probably not quite as cold as last night, because some of the most prone areas, like Scotland, where temperatures are already minus double digits across the far north and east, will drift into that milder air by morning. So actually, the coldest temperatures here will probably be this side of midnight, before it starts to thaw in the morning. Still probably would remain below freezing all night, but wouldn't drop further as we do head into the early hours of Sunday. Whereas further southwards and eastwards, just hanging into that colder air. So I suspect for parts of London, eastern England, southern England, and the far southeast, maybe not in city centres and town centres, but rural areas could see persistent frost for the next sort of 3 or 4 days. So yeah, it could remain very, very cold. If you do look at those minimum temperatures today, you can see all of these were earlier this morning, and you can see widely getting down to -5 to -10, and then you see those ones getting slightly colder than that. Again, this doesn't pick up every single weather station, but it shows you a good array here, and you can see lots of areas got down to those very, very cold conditions, mostly around that 6 to 8 a.m. in the morning, but a few earlier on in the day. If we do look at the max temperatures today, you can see 11 degrees was seen towards Scilly, across parts of the Republic of Ireland, Belmullet there, Cork, that's on the west coast, up to 10, 11 degrees, so very mild. And if we do look at the latest top 20, still 10 degrees, but if we look at the minimum, you can see already down to -11 in Altnahara, and many areas already below freezing. Some of these wouldn't have got above freezing today. So very cold conditions, and will likely continue in those southern and eastern portions over the coming days. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV, you can see that weather front slowly drifting in from the west through today, and you can see it does come inland, give a bit of winteriness, but it fizzles out very quickly. And you can see a little bit of snow where we've got some on the live radar, but nowhere near as extensive as it is in reality. So very interesting seeing that. If we actually do go back to the live radar, just want to have a look at those snow totals. How much snow have we actually seen from that weak weather front? Not too much, but again, with the ground being frozen, definitely would start to accumulate very, very quickly. So yeah, interesting seeing that. No warnings issued at the moment either. Now through this evening, we slowly see more of that cloud building in, and that's where that milder air mixing in, but it's those eastern portions where it's going to be the colder tonight, down to -5 once again. Tomorrow afternoon, we are going to see temperatures mostly above freezing, 3, 4, 5 degrees quite widely, so it is going to be a milder day, but still very chilly in certain spots. It's the start of the widespread thaw, and you can see into Monday, we all start to see that proper milder air, start to see a weather front pushing in, and all of this falling as rain, as the upper air temperatures are well above freezing. Monday, still chilly in the far south and east, maybe only 5 or 6 degrees, but generally now above freezing for all. And overnight, still could see an isolated frost in a few of those spots, even perhaps into Tuesday as well. But generally into next week, rain trying to push in from the north and the west, but with high pressure in control, it's going to keep it drier further southwards, and temperatures are going to be around average or slightly above average. You can see upper air temperatures still very cold through today, but slowly getting pushed away now, and they'll get fully pushed away for all into probably Monday morning there, into the later hours of Sunday from the far southeast. That's why there still could be a frost there into Monday morning, maybe Tuesday as well, given the cold surface temperatures, but I suspect later on this week we're unlikely to see frosts, as we do start to see a little bit more mobility under the higher pressure. If you look at the max temperatures, you can see early this morning, look at that exceptionally cold, wildly -5 to -10, down towards -20 in a few spots. This afternoon, we've got those freezing fog patches, especially further northwards, not getting much above freezing, but best 3 or 4 degrees, maybe slightly higher in those milder spots further westwards. Overnight tonight, lowest temperatures will be across those northern and eastern Scotland areas, where we've got snowfall still on the ground, and those areas across eastern England, -4 or -5. Further westwards, still probably around freezing or below freezing, but not quite as cold, as we do start to see a little bit of a mild temperature starting to push in. But maybe still -3 to -5, where we got some snow cover, but just not quite as widespread as it was last night. Sunday, you can start to see where we've not got snow in the ground. You can see where the snow still is across Scotland and northern England, where it's only sort of 1 or 2 degrees, we're starting to turn a bit milder. Still below average, still only 4 or 5 degrees, but slowly creeping up into Monday morning. A frost in the far east and south, and maybe an isolated frost elsewhere, and then into Monday afternoon, 5 to 7 degrees, so still chilly, but starting to warm up, and into the early hours of Tuesday, perhaps again a slight frost in the far southeast, but by Tuesday afternoon, we're all kind of 7 to 10 degrees, and into Monday, again, the risk of an isolated frost, but generally, all going to remain above freezing. Still into Thursday, perhaps a slight frost in the far south, but generally it is going to be a milder week. Temperatures back towards average or even slightly above average. Now, if you look at the latest GFS, the reason for this is high pressure is building in, and it does continue to dominate much of next week. However, as we do get beyond next week, we start to see low pressure starting to give a bit more of a mobile pattern. Now, the latest GFS here is fighting between high pressure and low pressure, and yeah, interesting to see what wins out. But yeah, GFS definitely suggesting here lower pressure winning out in that longer range with this big low tropospheric polar vortex towards Greenland. Now, this would be pushing very cold air into the North Atlantic. Of course, taking a very long sea track wouldn't actually give anything cold for the UK. Maybe allow a bit of snow across the Scottish Highlands, but for most, it would just be chilly, but not cold. But it would fuel these low pressure systems, and that's what we're seeing with this low here, which would be a really significant storm, down towards 958 millibars. We would likely see this named, given the wind gusts would be associated with this, looking at potentially 80 or 90 miles per hour. So yeah, very interesting here from the GFS, definitely suggesting the risk of something much, much more stormy as we do head into the second half of the month, as this big low tropospheric polar vortex starts to sink in. ECMWF has got the exact same solution, but something very similar. So yeah, could we be in for a stormy second half of the month? Again, because of how far southward the jet stream's diving, this wouldn't even be that mild. It wouldn't be cold, but you can see with that low pressure system clearing through, look at that, only 6 or 7 degrees as we see the slight cold sector moving through. So yeah, it wouldn't be particularly mild, and it would be really unsettled and really quite horrible there into the longer term. Do you compare it to the GEM? This shows you a little bit more discrepancy here between the runs, which is why we haven't got too much confidence in the longer range. Again, high pressure continue to build in, a bit more mobility there as we do head late next week. But look at this, high pressure starts to try and get going to our north, very interestingly trying to push in northerly winds and actually keep us colder, and this would even produce perhaps some more snow with a weather front there coming up against a cold block. We can see this, a battle between cold air and milder air, and yeah, that's a very interesting pattern, not showing that Atlantic mobility at all. Yes, stronger tropospheric polar vortex to our north, but this high towards Greenland and southern Greenland and Iceland having a lot more influence than any other run was showing. So yeah, interesting there. GEM showing a bit of a change, not quite the same as the GFS or ECMWF. Now, to compare to the ECMWF to finish off, again, high pressure firmly controlling the next sort of 5 or 6 days, and then low pressure starting to build in by the end of next weekend, but it doesn't have much success, at least initially. It's longer range, kind of a proper longer range here, day 11, day 12, where the low pressure arrives, and it arrives in force. Exceptionally deep area of low pressure, and it does give some very stormy conditions with very cold air getting pulled out into the Arctic, and a real fight here with that low pressure producing some exceptionally stormy conditions. Look at the temperature gradient there in the North Atlantic, kind of 35 degrees at edge of DHPA from northeast Canada out towards the mid-Atlantic, and exceptionally deep areas of low pressure there in and around Iceland and Greenland. That would be producing some exceptional storms and a lot of precipitation. But also something to look at is the Scandinavian high, which is trying to pull an easterly wind in. Not having much success, but that block actually slowly heads northwards. So yeah, a really peculiar run here from the ECMWF. It kind of does show a very similar stormy pattern like the GFS, but it goes about it in a really wacky way that would produce some significant disruption across the northern Atlantic, and yeah, would potentially produce some really quite stormy conditions for the UK as well. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but could be some further disruption for the second half of January, not necessarily from snow and ice like we've seen, but perhaps from wind, rain, and then potentially even some snow and ice if a colder air mass does get established, something like the GM was suggesting. So very interesting runs today, all suggesting that a different pattern for the second half of the month, not cold and blocked like it's been, much more mobile, but could be equally disruptive. Now, if you finish looking at the ensembles, very cold at the moment, but above average come next week. And of course, inversion still trying to take hold, which means it won't be as mild as these upper air temperatures do suggest. However, around the 19th, 20th of January, in around 8 or 9 days' time, we are likely to see that mobility return, and that's where we see those increased precipitation spikes. Nothing too huge at this stage, and not massive confidence in that very stormy pattern, and you see the ensembles are hovering around average or slightly above average. Some cold runs, some milder runs, but really no major bias here, no really sort of major option. So again, it's suggesting that there is a lot of uncertainty. If you finish by looking at the latest ECMWF ensembles, it's pretty much exactly the same. Big rise next week, and then a drop into the final third of January with increased precipitation. And then there's one really rogue run there, getting down to the minus 15 isotherm. That would be ridiculously cold. So yeah, no major solutions here from the ensembles, but operational runs definitely suggesting potentially a very disruptive second half of January. Again, after this lull next week of higher pressure, we could see low pressure return with a real vengeance, producing some very stormy, windy, rainy conditions there. But equally, a pattern like the GM or even the ECMWF trying to build a bit of a block that forces cold air our way, it could even introduce the risk of some snow and ice if that pattern came off. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting watch. Nothing clear-cut at this stage. I'm not expecting a repeat of what we've just seen in the past sort of 10 days or so with very cold, blocked conditions with some heavy snow. Not expecting that, but we could still see significant disruption from other factors, and even some snow and ice could mix in as well. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, January is the coldest month of the year, so you never know. Don't need as much cold air in place as we would in sort of November or March to see significant winteriness in January, and those couple of degrees can make all the difference when we are looking at the impacts. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I'll keep you updated into the longer term forecasts. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.